So in this video, we're going to be looking at the 4 principles behind energy for life. Now, these 4 core principles are where both ancient traditional healing systems really meet cutting edge physics theory. And over the last 17 years, most of our learning we've basically put into these 4 core principles, of which you'll get a very good understanding of bioenergetics from just understanding these 4 principles. So what are they? Number 1 is life exchanges energy. And simply put, in a practical manner, if you can optimize the exchange of energy with your environment, you can optimize your health. 2, fields govern energy. Or if you restore your body field, you're basically able to restore your master control system, which of course, if you are able to restore your master control system, again, you restore your health. And the third is that resonance communicates information. Put simply, if you can master resonance, you're able to master your life. And the fourth is a little bit more in depth. Information opposes entropy. Now, what this means is that you're able to heal by re-establishing information, efficiency, and energy. Well, let's now have a look at the first principle. So the first is that life exchanges energy, and basically health comes about from optimizing the exchange of energy between you and your environment. So let's look a little bit more deeply at how we exchange energy with the world around us. So firstly, what are the core ways that we exchange energy? Well, one is oxygen. We breathe oxygen in and then we excrete carbon dioxide out. If we wanted to increase that oxygen exchange, we might do exercise or cardiovascular activity, for instance. The second is water. If you don't drink fairly quickly, or if you don't drink for a few days, you end up dying. So water is very essential, and we generally drink it and then excrete it through urine and sweat, and also our feces. The third is light. Now, sometimes we don't think that we photosynthesis, but believe me, if you tried to live in a dark place, again, you would end up dying after a few months. Well, I say this, you can actually survive with food for a period, because ultimately you're able to get a source of energy from food instead of light. However, generally light is extremely important to your health. The fourth is nutrients, which of course you get from food. And the fifth is a little bit more unknown, which is electrons. Now, electrons come in a variety of formats. For those of you familiar with grounding, if you take off your shoes and your socks and you walk on the earth, you get a source of electrons from the earth. You can get a really rich source of electrons from swimming in the sea. But actually, when we're looking at electrons, it's a lot more fundamental than that. Ultimately, all of our sources of energy are actually from electrons. For instance, if we're looking inside the mitochondria, even when you're breaking down carbohydrate or sugar, what actually happens is that sugar is broken down into an electron transfer chain, where the actual energy is really coming from electrons. It's actually also the same with light. When we're hit by infrared light, or we're out in the sunshine, for instance, that light goes through the structured water inside our cells, ends up spinning out electrons, and then we actually notice that source of electrons as a form of energy. So, which is why, when you're going out in daylight or going out in nice warm atmospheres, you generally feel more energetic. Now, there's a really key point here. You don't really want maximal sources of this. So you don't want to be breathing 100% oxygen at pressure, like in a hyperbaric chamber. You don't want to be doing that all the time, because then your body adapts and other things happen. And again, there's something called hypoxic training, where athletes go up into the Colorado mountains if you're in the States, or up into a high place where there's less oxygen, and then they train up there in less oxygen. That's also not always good to be doing all the time, but the reason they're doing that is so that when they go back down to sea level and compete, their bodies have adapted to the less oxygen, so when they have more oxygen, it's better. But here, the body likes variance. It likes rich oxygen, it likes less oxygen. If you vary between, you're able to increase your body's metabolic flexibility, and you're able to survive, or more importantly, thrive in a broader environment. Same with water. There's some people that think you should be drinking huge amounts of water all the time so your urine is always clear. That's not necessarily the case. If you overdrink water, you end up stressing out your kidneys, and that actually consumes more energy, so that wouldn't be optimal either. Same with light. Very obviously, if you go out in the strong sunshine and burn all your skin, maximum sunlight is not good either. And for sure, we all know it with food. If you overeat, you become heavily overweight. But of course, if you don't eat anything, eventually you would starve away. So, what's really important when you're looking at these 5 fundamental ways you exchange energy is to think about the idea of optimal variance, not maximal variance. So it's just generally good to vary things. So that's why these ideas like fasting are great. So you fast for a day or two and then you eat. So it's the variance that you basically get the beneficial effects from. So let's just look at some other formats of variance. So one, there's circadian rhythm. So when you get up in the morning, you're exposed to blue light. You go during the day, and then in the evening the sun goes down, things get orange, and you go to sleep. That's just an example of the variance that's happening in a 24-hour cycle. And the other two really very large components to look at within variance is both the idea of stress and with nurture. So if we're looking in the physical training world, if we continually train and we continually overstress our body ends up breaking down, and it's not very good. But if we combine that with an equal amount of nurture, so your body's able to recover from the stress that came before it, that is far more optimal for helping to increase your metabolic flexibility and increase the range of things that you're able to do with your energy. So in short, generally, if you have too little stress, and I'm coming from someone who was bedridden for a period, and perhaps I didn't have enough physical stress during some of that period, the body can become extremely weak to where you're not able to do something. So that's not good. And it is an important point if you are suffering from disease and ill to not stop all activity. You do need some stress, otherwise your body will become weaker. But again, you don't want too much stress, because if you have too much continual stress, the body ends up breaking down, and that is not good either. And just as a way of rounding all of that out, the more nurture, generally, the more stress your body can adapt to. Now, second really important idea when we're looking at how our body is exchanging energy with the environment is this concept of looking at the body as a battery, or you could say as a water battery. Now, when we're looking inside the cell and we're looking inside the mitochondria is basically water, but it's not just ordinary water. It is what you call structured water. Now, structured water, instead of being H2O, has the molecular format of being H3O2, and in short, looks a little bit like a hexagonal shape. Now, you might ask, why does that matter? Now, what's special about structured water is that it has this ability to be able to convert heat, or if you like, photons, into a source of energy, i.e. electrons. Basically, when a photon hits structured water, ends up spinning out an additional electron, and that electron is able to be used as a source of energy for the cell. Now, what you can see on this slide is basically a demonstration of how light is able to increase the structure in your cell and, if you like, basically start acting as more of a water battery. So in the top slide, they're basically isn't much light being shined at the water, and so the structured water portion, which is demarked by the EZ layer, is quite small. And as we start shining more light into this water sample, you start to see the structure build up, i.e. that EZ band becomes larger. And when we're looking at what's happening within the body or within the cell, this is basically saying as we start exposing ourselves to more light and heat, we start to build up the structure within our own cells. In other words, we start charging up our own body's cellular batteries. So if you like, all animals are basically like solar panels that are connected to our own internal battery. And the idea here is to basically help to charge our own body's energy. And of course, the other really important idea is we also want to make how we're using that energy to be super efficient. Now, when someone is very diseased, generally that means that the efficiency of how energy is flowing throughout their body is actually really poor. And so if we can do these two things from both sides of the equation, one, help our body to become more efficient so that energy flows correctly, and also B, help to charge up that body battery, then we can end up with a nice full body battery and you end up feeling like you have energy for life. So how does this idea of energy start to apply to both healing and disease? Well, there's a multitude of reasons that you need energy in the body, but just at its most simplest for a minute, let's just imagine that we just need energy for all your daily functions, like we need to digest food, our heart needs to beat, we need to think, force, etc. And then we also need energy for healing, for regenerating ourselves, for making our body stronger. And if we're using up all of our energy for our daily activities, we basically don't have energy left for regeneration or for healing. And so if that goes on for a long enough period, you start to slowly get into a diseased process and the body becomes more inefficient. In other words, basically disease, it uses more energy than necessary, and healing really is exactly the opposite. Healing occurs when there's enough energy available beyond our daily functional needs so that we actually have energy to regenerate and repair ourselves. So a really key thing to think about when you're looking at this idea of how we're exchanging energy with the environment is ensuring that you're exchanging enough energy with the environment and that you're not using all of your energy up so that you're able to redirect that energy towards healing and get yourself better. Now, for the second principle, I hope you're holding on to your physics degree because you might just need it. So the second is fields govern energy. And simply put, if you're able to restore your body field, you are able to restore your master control system. So here's where the physics comes in. Einstein's great discovery, or the thing he's known for the best, is E equals mc squared. Now, fancy physics equations aside, all that really means is that energy is equivalent to matter. In other words, all of the matter that is in our reality and every physical object, including our own biology, fundamentally is constructed of energy. It's nothing more or nothing less when you break it down. Now, the second quote that he's not quite as famous for, but still pretty famous for, is that the field is the sole governing force of the particle. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, what he's saying is basically without the field, and we're talking about a field of information, the particle basically doesn't exist. You know, the reason that the particle is there is because it's held in place by a field of energy and information. Now, let's just extrapolate that up to our own biology. So if we know that matter is simply energy and that this energy is basically a field of information and energy. When we're looking at our own biology, well, what's actually the governing force of ourselves, of our own life? Well, it's actually the fields within us. So what we can also say is that the body field is the sole governing force of life. And so in order to be able to govern your life, to be able to heal yourself, to be able to get your health back, if you're able to correct the fields in your body, you're also able to correct your health. This is so fundamental that we can actually say that the body field is therefore the master control system well over and above all of biochemistry. And this, of course, makes a lot of sense if we're just looking at how science interrelates with each other. Physics is at the top of a pyramid, then you have chemistry, and then underneath you have biology. Now in our bioenergetics training, we look really deeply at how these fields are generated, and we basically look at how all of the different organ systems are able to generate fields, and how these fields in turn are able to direct all of the physiology going on in your body. But not only that, we also look at how energy flows in the body, which is what we call our energetic integrators, which is really for another video. One of the best ways that you can use to restore your body field is to re-imprint your body's own information with its optimal blueprint. Which leads us into our third principle, which is resonance communicates information. So what you can see up on the screen here is two tuning forks. Now, if you take a tuning fork that, let's say, is tuned into key A, and we strike it, it starts humming at key A, and we take another tuning fork that is tuned into, let's say, G, this tuning fork here won't make any sound. But if we pick up another tuning fork that is also tuned in at key A, this tuning fork will start resonating, and then we get a louder noise in the room. That's basically the principle of resonance, of which also works at the subatomic level and is behind how the body field is able to communicate to every cell in your body. I know you all want another physics lesson. Okay, well, here comes Dr. Quantum. So in the quantum world, there's three significant principles that we can apply to health and healing. One is quantum superposition. This basically means that a particle has the potential to be in all possible places at once. Or another way of putting it is the observer effect, which is basically saying that a particle doesn't exist until it's measured or observed. When it comes to healing, why does that matter? Well, simply put, it just means that your intention really does affect the outcome. So it really matters how you're interacting with your patient and your client, and that if you have a good intention for them to get better, they're more likely to get better than not. The second is quantum entanglement. This is basically saying that particles that have a relationship are able to communicate non-locally. This is wonderful because it enables us to have instantaneous communication across the body, which is really crucial in the body, because for the body to operate all of its trillion cells accurately, precisely, in time, and for everything to know exactly what it's meant to do, you actually need an instantaneous communication system. And quantum entanglement and the other rules in quantum allow that possibility to happen. And the third is quantum coherence. Now, information is able to provide pathways for energy, and the more coherent this information, the more efficient these pathways. If we're looking at something like photosynthesis, it's actually nearly 100% efficient. In other words, the photon knows exactly how to pass through the leaf to transfer its energy so that plant is able to grow. And exactly the same thing is happening in the body, i.e. the body field is basically quantum coherence in action. The information that is in the body field basically means that all of the trillions of processes that are happening in your body every single second know exactly what to do and are as efficient as they can be. And without quantum coherence, that isn't possible. So what are the implications of this wonderful quantum world? Well, firstly, the body field is many, many orders of magnitude more efficient than biochemistry for communication. Now we could take an example of that. Now if we imagine that we were trying to coordinate everything through chemical messages, and we have different glands all producing hormones, and they start traveling through the blood and being picked up by other chemical receptors. Well, that's great as a backup plan, as a longer term plan, but it's not instantaneous and doesn't help to explain how every cell knows exactly what to do exactly when needed. 2, it means that thought can influence cellular communication. It's also another form of doing information therapy, is being able to think things and being able to direct it through thought. And the third, of course, is when we're looking at things like infoceuticals. Now, an infoceutical is basically coherent information that's been imprinted into structured water. And then from there, it's able to imprint into the body's cells daily to restore its resonance and quantum coherence. And the last principle is that information opposes entropy. Now, this principle really wraps up a lot of ancient healing theories with also the original 3 principles that we've already talked about. And basically, it helps us to heal by restoring information, efficiency, and energy. I know you really wanted another physics lesson. I promise you this is the last one. So let's just take a look at the second law of thermodynamics, which is all about entropy. The second law of thermodynamics basically says that all closed systems tend towards chaos. It's a very fancy way of saying basically anything that has heat or energy just dissipates itself right across the universe, both through space and time. However, is that entirely true? The life and the universe were created and actually became more ordered over time, at least if you're following the Big Bang theory. So yes, we had a nice Big Bang and everything started dissipating across the universe, yet at the same time, also the universe became more ordered. For example, on planet Earth, life started being created. Now that doesn't seem to go hand in hand with this idea that everything is tending towards chaos. We also seem to have this opposing effect of organization, order, or if you like, information. And the reason this is true is because of this other law, that information fields oppose entropy. So wherever we have entropy, we also have an equal and opposite effect of organization, order, and information. So simply put, order, or if you like, information fields, they create efficiency. That's why we at NES are trying to help your body be more ordered. That's why we're so keen to give your body more information, because it helps to create order, and order creates efficiency. And if we have efficiency, your body uses less energy and has more energy left over for healing. Simply put, information and efficiency, they lead to a healthier and longer life. And the opposite, chaos and inefficiency, to put it to not too finer a point, they lead to death. So the body is always trying to find the most efficient state, requiring the lowest demands on energy. And a free-flowing ordered body field, we could say, is energy efficient, or the opposite, a distorted and blocked body field, is extremely energy inefficient. And these distortions come from everything you likely already know about in natural health. They come from an excess stress of trauma, pathogens, toxins, emotions, you name it. There's many, many reasons. And what we're trying to do in healing is really, really simple. We're just re-establishing order. That's the main name of the game. Now, this idea of information opposing entry also happens in the body and actually happens in both traditional and alternative medicine. Now, how does this actually apply in the body? Well, generally in healing, this is both in traditional and various alternative methods of healing. In a way, really, there's two ways of getting the body to respond and be better. One is through a negative hormetic stress. Now, actually, pretty much all of herbal medicine works in that way, as does homeopathy, as of course even do vaccines. They basically stress the body through giving a negative message in some particular way. And then the body reacts against that, and it strengthens itself and heals itself against that negative message. And the other way, of course, is to actually just give the body the positive healing information in the first place. That's what we do with infoceuticals, with the My Health. It's also what a lot of positive-based mind therapies do as well. So you can come in from either direction. And if you like, the healing systems, it's a bit like a rubber band. And if you stretch it this way, let it go, it'll sort of oscillate and the body will basically respond and go back and forth a bit and hopefully balance out and get yourself well. And the key thing really here is that if you're doing one of these negative hormetic type stress things, is you have to make sure that the stress isn't greater than your energy reserve. So if we go back to that body battery idea, if your body battery is full, if you're exchanging a lot of the energy with the environment, your body's fairly efficient, you can actually stretch that rubber band. You can take a lot of negative stress, a lot of hormetic stress, and the body has enough energy reserve to react against it. It will regenerate and heal against that. But if in the case of many diseases, your battery reserves are really low and you apply too much stress, it's a little bit like a very frayed rubber band trying to hold it all together. The band might break or get extremely frayed and loose, and that ends up sort of on that pathway to deeper and deeper disease or even death. So really, if you're going to try and heal yourself through hormetic type ideas, you've got to make sure it's only a very little bit of stress, because you don't have enough energy reserve for the body to respond to. Or you can just provide the body with the positive information in the first place, and that helps the body go back towards its original blueprint. And of course, all of this you want to pair with this idea of the body battery, so you're always increasing the exchange of energy with the environment, making sure that battery is topped up, and then just guiding the body back through either hormesis or through positive information back to better health. So to sum up, there's 3 ways to elicit healing. 1, a hormetic stimulatory response. 2, the positive information on how to respond. And 3, make sure that the energy flow is greater than current energy needs. Now, if you do all 3, you're going to maximize your results. So how does that actually look over time when we're looking at the body? Let's just say you're perfectly healthy, you're going along in normal life with normal levels of energy. And let's say you end up under a bit of stress, you overwork for a week or 2, you end up catching someone's bug, you end up getting a flu. So what happens? Well, your body starts expending more energy for a period. So this is what we would call an overactive energy state. And in our bioenergetic theory, we say basically your ETs, or your energetic terrains, have been activated. Now, an energetic terrain is basically a bit like a healing message, but it's when the body's own positive information is responding to, i.e. it's opposing that hormetic negative stressor of, for instance, the flu bug in this theoretical case. So we end up in this overactive state. Now that's all very well, and in normal conditions, that information, the ETs being activated, will be enough to basically correct the bug and bring you back into balance after a normal 10-day period, and you carry on upon your life. Great. That's what happens in an acute situation. However, what happens for most clients who might be visiting you as a practitioner is actually they have a chronic condition, which basically means that the stress has gone on so long, i.e., let's say this theoretical person has got the flu, but they carry on overworking. They may be juggling two jobs, or they've still got to look after their kids. And the stress basically just continues and continues. So their body battery just gets burnt out. They don't actually have enough energy reserves available for that healing reaction to happen. And so what happens? They basically deteriorate down into an underactive, low energy state, or what we would call a chronic phase. Now, why is the body doing this? Well, simply it doesn't have enough energy left to basically do the information opposing, simply the body doesn't have enough energy reserves left to try and heal yourself in that moment. So it goes into conservation mode, and it just wants to save up your energy so it stays down in this low energy state, rocking along the bottom in a chronic type phase until it's able to have built up enough energy. That's assuming that you're able to nurture the body and basically help it to rebuild the body's battery. But if we end up in this chronic phase and they're fortunate enough to meet you as a bioenergetic practitioner, and you're able to educate and help them rebuild their body's battery, so they end up with enough energy in reserve for the ETs to be able to be activated. In other words, we get what's known as a healing response, or sometimes it's known as a Herxia reaction, but basically the body ends up in this healing response. You end up with overactive energy for a short period, and all things going well, the body responds and helps correct itself. Now, what will happen for most people who have had a chronic condition for a long time, they won't just bounce back to normal, basically because their overall ability to generate energy is generally reduced. So they will bounce back below what you would call the baseline, but it won't go down as far as it did before. And then the process ends up repeating itself and oscillates up and down until you end up healthy again. Now, within our protocols, you can, of course, oscillate between these energy building type protocols, which we call the body field protocol, that helps make your energy flow more efficient and is mostly using energetic drivers and energetic integrators. And you can also oscillate that with the emotional immunity protocol, which basically makes a much heavier use of the energetic terrains, some of the brain holograms, and also some of the core drivers that are used to support the emotional immunity protocol. And as a general rule, if you start to recognize where people are, or let's say the ETs came up more, you might want to use that protocol. And if the drivers and integrators came up more, or you know they were very depleted in energy, you might just want to use the gentle body field protocol. Now, within the bioenergetic wellness system, really there's 3 ways that you can use to optimize these 4 principles. Now, the first is to transform habits through using the client portal and Energy for Life web application. The second is to correct the information that directs the cellular communication using infoceuticals. And the third is to rejuvenate the energy flow using the MyHealth. Now, I hope you enjoyed learning about the 4 principles. These really are at the core of bioenergetics, and having a deep understanding of how these 4 actually work will really help to answer many questions you have when you're considering how to help a client restore their energy for life.